Okay, my name is Bill Baker with Firestorm, and I'm sorry we had a slight delay here. We'll give you back your 2 minutes at the end of the session. Today we're talking about creating an intelligence network. This is part one of two, where we're going to be talking about virtual investigation next week. Sounds a little bit esoteric, but we do have a true expert in Karen Masullo who's going to be with us. We invite you to become our friend at Facebook, Firestorm Solutions. You can also follow us on Twitter at Firestorm Soul. There is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communication, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind our presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and the work product provided must be read in conjunction with your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret what we say here as legal advice or legal opinion. We're delighted to have a continuing relationship with the New Jersey MEP. This is the 7th in the 2015 series of the Crisis Coach webinar series. We do have two presenters, Joe Caratanudo with the New Jersey MEP and our very own Blair Neville, who's a principal of Firestorm located in New Jersey. Joe, over to you, and Blair, please.
Thanks, Bill. This is Joe Caratanudo from the New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program. For those that aren't familiar, New Jersey MEP's mission is to work with manufacturers in the state to help them become more productive, more efficient, and more globally competitive. And we do it through a number of different services that we provide in assisting companies with things like R&D tax credits, lean manufacturing, process improvement, Six Sigma, ISO certification. And one of the programs we're actually promoting right now is a DoD-sponsored program called Market Shift, which can assist manufacturers in two areas. One is on new product innovation, and the other is on improving their exports through a program called Export Tech. The details for these and the scholarships that are available through the Department of Defense are actually listed on our website at njmep.org. So anyone that might be interested in those topics actually would be timely, because there's programs coming up later this month and also in September to support those subjects. But obviously one of our other focuses is business continuity planning. So Blair, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, Joe. Thank you very much. And I want to, again, thank the New Jersey MEP for supporting this activity and their energy and desire to provide this kind of information to your clients. One thing I did want to say about today's session is that as we work with customers, and a lot of our clients with their plans, one of the things that always comes up is, once I have a good understanding of threats and risks in my business, how do I monitor them? How do I keep on top of them and look for those red flags? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And we have a special treat with Karen Masullo, who is just an expert in that field, and I know is going to do a great job in helping us understand, once you have some controls around your risks and what things can affect your business, is how do I keep an eye on them? How do I make sure that if those red flags pop up, I have some way to respond to them? So again, I think it's going to be a great session, and I want to thank Karen for taking her time with us today. Karen?
Thank you so much, Blair and Joe and Bill. And hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be speaking with you today. If at any time during the session you'd like to ask a question, we have a lot to get through today, and we may not get to live questions in the session, but I will respond to any questions that you've asked after the session. Every session that Firestorm does, we create a brief, and those briefs can be found on our website. And the last slide in the deck will show you where you can find those. So as we move through a good deal of information today, you'll be able to reference back to the brief and also ask questions in the GoToWebinar area. One of the first things we want to talk about today is how do you know what you don't know? We know certain things in our lives. I know how to monitor for social media. I also know what I don't know. I don't know how to speak Chinese, and I don't know how to drive a Formula One race car. But I don't know what I don't know, and that's probably the majority of information I don't know out there. So how do we become more aware so that in a crisis we can avoid the number 3 most common failure that Firestorm has identified, which is the failure to identify and monitor all threats and risks. And threats and risks come in all shapes and sizes. You know, there are certain incident types, and especially for those on the East Coast, we're very aware of our weather, and we generally stay on top of it. We can be prepared. We're going to go to the store. We're going to get everything we need for it. But sadly, there are other instances that come out of the blue. There may have been warning signs, but we weren't aware of or didn't see those warning signs beforehand. I live in Charleston, so I use the Charleston strong symbol because even though I do this for a living, having something like this visit our own town, my own town, just a few miles away, was intensely shocking. But what's more shocking is that the shooter had actually planned on targeting the local university first, which is right in the middle of our downtown, and wasn't able to because of security around the university at that time. But there are incidents that have no warning or very subtle warning, and those are the ones that we're actually looking at. And instead of making preparations to panic, as depicted in this cartoon, we'd like to make preparations to predict, plan, and perform for crises as they occur. The most important piece of this is because learning should not happen when you're in panic mode. And that's an important thing to talk about with your teams, no matter the size of your company. If you haven't practiced, if you haven't predicted the threats through a thorough threat assessment, if you haven't planned and trained for an event, you will not be able to perform in the event, and learning will happen when you're in panic mode. Now, before we jump into the meat of our topic, I want to look at just some quick emerging technologies because it's important as business owners and managers that we keep aware of what are the new, in this case, we're going to be looking at social conversation sites that are popping up. Fortunately, Firestorm uses a combination of 2 different tools to achieve its monitoring. And fortunately, through those tools, we both cover almost 30 different social sites, plus news and other aggregate discussion board and blog type information. But both of those tools are constantly being evolved to add the API for whatever new tools are coming out. So as something becomes more popular, we certainly keep our eye on it. Okay, we got a new one. It's called Destructs. Destructs promises that anything you post on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, with a touch of a button, you'll be able to destroy it and it will never exist again. I think we've seen with other applications that say this happens, that it doesn't really happen. And it, again, doesn't stop people from screenshotting or doing whatever they want to with information. So my enthusiasm for this new one out of the box is not very high, and I don't think it's very practical. I don't know if you've heard about Yo. Yo is an application that started about a year ago so that you could actually send somebody a yo. So as a humorous tool, it was kind of cool. But now Yo has evolved to video, to images, to some other applications, and it has just raised a significant amount of first-round money. It's something to watch, and it's something to understand if your employees or others are using it and maybe talking about or in your business. Culture Sphere is specifically for business, and they tout themselves as the world's first social sharing platform for employee-inspired media. And my concern here, it hasn't quite launched yet. They're in their beta phase, but I am always concerned when employees feel that information they're sharing internally stays internal. So another thing to watch out for. Hyper. Guess what? You can text anybody a link on Hyper if you have their number, which means you get to text them malware, all kinds of other dangerous types of things. And so for those of you in the IT world that are constantly trying to put up walls to protect your businesses, it's really important to understand that now people are going to be receiving links more quickly than ever before. On this page, I just put up a bunch of other ones. Shots. Shots is like Snapchat. Does it really disappear after you send it? Probably not. Meerkat, live streaming video. Meerkat's great for business. We've used it ourselves, but there are some dangers there for your business as well. Notch is for business. It gives new content distribution. Periscope, same thing, not same thing as Meerkat, but a competitor to Meerkat. Rounds. Rounds offers free group video, voice, and text chat. So all kinds of things to distract people at work. But here's the one I really wanted to show you, especially those of you who may be involved in schools. You may be on a school board. You may be on a PTA. You may run a soccer league or coach the kids in your community. And you may have children at home. And this is called YouNow. And YouNow allows for live streaming of video from anywhere, and people interact with the video via a chat function and ask questions of the person who's showing themselves in a live streaming environment. And what we've seen happen is that the text people are texting becomes very aggressive, especially in the case of young women and young men. There are challenges and dares to do things on camera that we would not prefer that our young people are doing. Aside from that, viewing and participating in this kind of activity could be viewed as illegal activity. If you have kids, you need to talk to them now and see if YouNow is an application that they are indeed using. Additionally, when we see not just kids using these applications, but as we've seen on some of the SWAT hits on Twitch TV, which is a gamer universe where they send the SWAT team to someone's house so they can watch it live, we've seen people broadcasting, and we can see all of the things on their desk, in their office, in their environment, and it can create some real confidentiality issues if someone is not exceptionally careful about what's in the background on their desk, in their environment. And for young people, certainly personal information is all over the room and can really open them up to a different kind of risk. So every month I look at what's new and emerging, and if you'd like to talk to us about that, about what applications are new and emerging that may affect your business, please feel free to send me an email, and I'll have that at the end of the session. So what we're talking about today is thinking about all these things. You know, what are the existing applications out there that are being used? Are they starting to fade into the background? No. But what are the new ones that are coming in to complicate the picture? And so about 4 years ago, we started to build an intelligence network at Firestorm and really understand what monitoring is about. So the first thing we know about monitoring is that you must set a baseline. Many people monitor, especially on the marketing side of the house, for competitors. You market for your brand name. You market for your product names and how people may be interacting with those. But there are other aspects of conversation that affect your location, those businesses around you, your facility, your parking lot, your equipment, that you may not be monitoring for. And so we have to first understand how are people talking, and what and how and where do they discuss it, and what are the indicators in those conversations that may signal a threat or a risk to your business. In this image that I'm showing you, this is some monitoring that we do for a client. We do this for their physical locations, and we can tell them during the business day what social activity that is geo located. So if someone has the geolocation turned on their device, what conversations are coming out of their work environment on a daily basis. And it was quite surprising to them to see so much Instagram, Twitter, Yik-Yak, a variety of conversations that are ongoing all of the time. And some of them are in the parking lot, some of them are actually in the building, so we can really see the full depth of it. These are publicly posted, not private, and these are for those persons who have geolocation turned on. Now we have another tool that we use so that if it's not geolocated, we can combine the two. But this one that we saw on July 5th was pretty typical. Last night after we dropped Brenda off work, we went through her drive-through, got food, and told her to hit the blunt. I never knew so many people were hitting blunts through drive-through windows until I started doing this particular work. And I think you'll see what I mean in some examples that I'm going to show you in just a moment. But this gives us a really good ability for our clients to be able to say, this is what we see going on at your physical location. Now, once we have figured out what the regular conversations are, we're more able to identify deviations then. So we know what the norm is for the conversation. Now we have to be able to put those conversations into context and understand, is this a deviation? So someone may be saying to a police officer, I'm happy you brought your gun to work today, good job. Or that may be in a completely different context. It may be another conversation going on that is something we need to become alert for. Or it could be a song lyric. So for all of these things, we have to do a little bit of extra research so that we can put it into context for you. And then through our tools, we're able to say this specific keyword at this specific location, or not just a keyword, but a phrase of words, is showing us that there is a higher risk associated with this person of interest, with this location of interest, than is normal. And we're able then to alert you in a way that you can take actionable. You can take real action. I was going to say actionable results, but that wasn't really the right word. So one of the other things we want to talk to you about, and this will be in the brief, is what is protected. We have to remember that there are off-duty conduct, excuse me, off-duty conduct laws for employees that protect their posting in a social environment. And there are protections for political views, there are protections for whistleblowers, there are prohibitions on retaliation, and there are concerted activity protections. The National Labor Relations Act has said that employees have a right to communicate with each other about the terms and conditions of their employment and to join together in a union or otherwise, which means on Facebook, and talk about low wages, poor benefits, a difficult manager, etc. So when we're looking at these, we want to make sure that in the predict portion of predict, plan, perform, that we have assessed social media policies, social media procedures, and training of your employees on those things and your management so that everybody understands what truly constitutes a risk. And you know, people say the most amazing things on social media. I think you may have seen this example, a young woman who posted, "Ooh, I start this expletive job tomorrow, thumbs down," and her boss responding, "No, you don't. I just fired you. Good luck with no money and no job life." This manager of this pizza establishment, a franchised location, had no idea that his little response to her, and he had followed her after she put in her application. He connected with her. He looked at her on social media, called her in for an interview, hired her, and so, of course, he was able to see what she was saying. What he didn't realize was that he would get the media attention he did. As you can see, when we grabbed this in February of 2015, there were 3,832 retweets. So for those of you not on Twitter, that means people reshared and reshared. And there were 4,324 favorites, which go into like a favorites list, sort of like a like on Facebook. And he had no idea it increased exponentially from there. I caught that earlier in the time period. And then he deleted that. He deleted his account. It caused him a lot of grief. He had media showing up. So his response created a secondary crisis. And that's another one of the things we want to think through. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about when we see a real threat. In this instance, it's about a gun in a school. It certainly could be in a workplace violence, workplace accident situation. But this was one that we had just come across recently while I was doing some monitoring. And it's important. Our president says, you know, social media is not random. It's targeted. It's always about something. It's always to someone, because I wouldn't be putting it on social media for everyone to see if it wasn't. And in this specific instance, I saw something that said, I'm taking my gun to school. Now, I see that a lot. I see more than 50 references to bringing a gun to school on a daily basis. There's a popular song lyric out that includes that, so I have to take those out of the equation. In other situations, it's someone saying, oh, I forgot my homework, I'm going to shoot myself, or I'm, you know, taking a water gun to school. So we also put those in context. But when I looked at this, so when I looked in a broad view and then looked more closely at this person in particular and looked at the escalation of comments prior to this one, I thought they may have a real issue, not a joke, not a song lyric. Additionally, this was an anonymous account. So my team then had to research the person's circle of influence, who their friends are, and these are all public profiles, what the most likely geographic area that they occurred or existed in, what high school was in the middle of that geographic area, and any references to that high school. And we did indeed get the right high school and the right principal. We got them involved. And the next thing that we saw tweeted out was from this person that said, I think I'm going to be expelled from, e.g. was the school, because there was a bullet found in my locker and a clip found in my room. And then I think we know what FML stands for, and if you don't, email me and I'll let you know. So we can very quickly spot an issue and intervene. Now, we timed this issue because we really want to become efficient. And researching all the way through took us 32 minutes to figure out. And for me, that's too long. Fortunately, we were pretty sure it was on the West Coast and we were on the East Coast, and that their school day hadn't started yet. But it still felt too long to me. So we've worked with our provider of this tool, and they very quickly came up with some options for us that have now allowed us to look at a similar situation and resolve it in about 6 minutes. So not only are we at the cutting edge of monitoring, but we're also at the cutting edge of trying to create the tools and devices to notify you more quickly when a real threat is identified. Because people know, and when they know, they talk. And when they talk on social media in a variety of applications. So in addition to the standard ones, Facebook and Twitter, if you've been on any of our sessions prior to on this subject, you'll know there's that edge of the dark web, 4chan, and some of the things like chat roulette. And then there's even the darker web that we can go into and look for real threats. And that takes time and it takes people, but that's what we're here for. I put this issue up because there were a couple of issues that occurred yesterday, and I thought this was an interesting one, especially as a brand and a business go. Paula Dean's social media manager posted a picture of Paula and Bobby Dean from Halloween of 2011. And given the issues that Paula Dean's brand had, showing her son appearing in brownface was certainly something that anyone should know, given their history. They probably wanted to be more sensitive about. They immediately took the picture down and then terminated their relationship with their social media manager. So there are a couple of things here. You can't always blame your social media manager, so I think time will tell if that's the truth here. But the other thing is, if you have a third party managing your social properties, and many companies do because there is a good deal of effort involved, how do you measure their success? And effectiveness? And have you trained them in what you feel are the best standards and practices for your specific business? If you're a maker of industrial widgets and you simply tell your social media manager, well, just talk to people about widgets, that's not enough. We need to be more aggressive and more proactive in making sure that our voice and our message is going out so that we don't have issues like that. Because words matter, and the intent of those words matter, or in this case, images matter, and the intent of the images. How it's interpreted by the crowd is what is going to determine whether you're facing a messaging crisis or not. This is a view of a very quick snapshot I did yesterday in a very tiny period of time on Subway. Because, as you may have read in the paper, Subway's spokesperson is what the FBI visited his home, they believe related to an issue that had happened with a charity and someone who was accused of child pornography. So it's a rather complex case. Subway immediately cut all ties with Jared. They took off their special web sections on their website devoted to his activity with the charity. And in a very short period of time, Subway was trending to the point that this was in about a 30-minute period. They went from an average number of mentions per day to almost a little over 8.5 million impressions of their brand in a very negative way. So they've got a real, they have a very complex issue going on with their brand, with their spokesperson. Their spokesperson, Jared, has a very complex issue ongoing, and nothing is really known yet. So this is before we even have any facts. Subway did say, put out a statement, and they said, we're very concerned and we'll be monitoring the situation closely. We don't have any more details at this point. And that's true. They didn't have any more details, but they still removed any mention of Jared from their website. Now, we've talked about context a little bit. Is it a song lyric? How do I know why and what people are talking about? Well, it depends on what region of the country you live in, how people speak in your area. What group of persons are we looking at? Excuse me, losing my voice again. And so I just put an image up here for you. You know, do you know what flocking is? If you see that a group of people have decided to flock in your area, what does that mean to you? And this happened right before sort of a flash mob spent about 2.5 hours walking through an area in Kentucky, destroying stores and businesses. And this person indicates that they were certainly armed when that was going on. So monitoring so that you understand what's going on very specifically in your regional area and your business community is important. Just, you know, is there going to be a parade that day? Is there going to be an Occupy protest walking by your business? What do you need to know about that, and being aware of your environment? Is your policy in place, and is it enforceable? We talked about that at the beginning, and this is an example of a young woman who sadly, as you can see, is wearing fatigues. She is a chaplain's assistant in the Army and was very happy to be extremely racially insensitive and just a constant diatribe of some very offensive information. And in one of those posts said, I'm a squared away soldier in real life. Good luck coming to my chain of command about some Twitter stuff. Promised they're going to laugh. They did not laugh. This was not taken lightly. Once it came to light about her constant social media usage and what she was really doing in her job. But they were monitoring, so they were able to catch it, but they didn't catch it early enough. A watchdog group actually caught it before the Army did. And then looking again at a geo level, we see the impact to businesses, and we see what this does to brands because we're looking. But we're not just looking, again, at your brand name. We're looking at a variety of keywords and geolocations in order to give you a better picture. And again, here's a picture hitting a blunt at a drive-through. And the reason that I show you this is if you see the little V in the top right-hand corner, that's a Vine, which is a video. So this wasn't just a little snapshot somebody put on their Instagram account. This was a Vine someone put on that was then reshared by this account, MTM, which had thousands of followers. And it became something that was shared and reshared over and over again. So imagine getting up and going into work in the morning to one of your franchise locations and realizing that you don't have until tomorrow to deal with what happened on social media yesterday because it's in your organization now. And the impact is broad. And here's another guy. I guess people are just doing this, and I just hadn't realized. And that's a pretty big name. So we need to understand what behaviors of concern constitute. We take our application of experience in combination with what we understand for a specific business or environment, your identified risks, your threats, and your vulnerabilities. And then we're able to create a monitoring environment that gives you predictive and actionable intelligence. So this person who says, I kind of want to bring my gun to work sometimes, let every dirty blank in here have it. We put that into context. We looked deeper at that person's thread. We looked at their sphere of influence and realized there is a danger here. So we had to narrow that down in order to let that employer know that we felt that there was a credible threat. Someone else saying, I wasn't feeling safe at work. This guy was bringing his gun to work in his bag. We need to let somebody know that. If that's your company, if that's your business, if that's your employee, not talking to you but talking on social media, you'd want to know that. And then someone saying, so this guy told me he was going to kill me at work today. Again, we don't want people going to social media. We want them going to you. But if they do go to social media, we need to let you know. And once we've heard these conversations, it's time for us to look much more deeply. Now, one of the applications we have is one of, if not the only application we know of right now that tracks emoji. And emoji are these little pictures that you see your kids texting, or you may use emojis. I don't because my iPhone is ancient, but they tell a story. There's actually a restaurant in New York where the entire menu is only done in emoji. And this is one that our application would pick up on its risk meter as a threat. We have the image of a police officer and a gun pointing at the police officer. So we would get an alert on that if that was one that we were specifically watching. So I wanted to give you a brief idea of how then we take that a step further and look at the geolocation or analysis. Where my red arrow is, my red marker is, that is the center of the area I'm monitoring, and I would zoom in on that specific block. when we did, we started watching from November on through a person who seemed like they were having behaviors of concern. Had to go off on a white guy today. When I get off work, I have road rage. I barely talk to anyone anymore. Well, based on the work that one of our co-founders, Susie Laughlin, has done in behavioral risk threat assessment, we understand that these are some behaviors of concern that we need to watch. And then he starts talking about, I'm quietly making moves on big things to come, and even the people I once loved hate me, want me dead, they want me dead, actions speak, some days I'm ready to go to war. On this specific day, while he was at work, there were a flurry of these. There were actually, at the end of the day, there were 56 tweets alone on that day. And he kept going as the week went on. Every day is stressful for me, stress going up. No respect for a liar, no conversation for a hater, no loyalty for a fake. And started doing these memes in a rapid way. And if you can see underneath where the message is, you can see all of the little marks of the tweets. Those were all of their tweets on their property. And we could actually watch him walking from one part of the building to another and tweeting all the time while he was working. And at this point, there started to be a greater escalation of what we had seen before. There was, after this, a threat of violence. There was intervention, and there was movement by our client in order to assure that there was no issue. They would not have known about this otherwise, but we were able to visually give them the information they needed. Again, that is public. This isn't something that we're using any dark methods for. The one thing as well, I have a team of analysts, and we work very hard to make sure that we are objective when we're looking at this information. There's something called apophenia, and that's the experience of perceiving patterns or connections in random or meaningless data. And we work hard not to do that. A seasoned intelligence analyst will be objective, and we will present you the information in a way where we're not making jumps and conclusions. We don't want to frighten anyone. We want to take care of issues. Now, do you know who you have in your organization who is an intelligence analyst, who is capable of monitoring these types of things and being objective and bringing them to your attention? Do they have the right tools? If you don't know who that person is, or you don't have the tools, and you're just using Google Alerts to monitor for your business, you're missing a great deal, and we'd like you to be better prepared. So in summary, we're going to, in the future, just think about monitoring as actually building an intelligence network. First, we listen, and we create conversation aggregators. We listen to the whole chaotic universe of conversation and aggregate those comments, that chatter, into a clear funnel that is applicable for your business, your environment, your risks, your threats, and your concerns. And then we look deeper when we see an issue that requires deeper investigation. We focus on a specific location, a specific event. Maybe there's a marathon in your city, or a specific person, a person of interest based upon the identified crisis, threat, risk, exposure, or vulnerability we identify in the listening phase. We utilize geo-coding and then spheres of influence, and it brings us targeted awareness instead of general. And time is the most important thing we can give you. We follow best practices. We want you to have good written plans and create an intelligence network so that you can effectively predict, plan, and perform. You know, most of the time you're making decisions based, A, in a panic situation, or in a crisis where information is generally wrong, data is not available, policies don't exist. So the intelligence network helps you make intelligent decisions based on real data and information. And that is what we call critical decision support. Now, just before we close today, I also want you to think through your own internal messaging as it comes out. You know, Jim Rome just randomly put a tweet out there and said, you know, if there's anyone not in a marching band who thinks those dorks running around in their instruments are cool, asking the question. And I love this response from the Army Field Band, just running around with our instruments. That was a well-thought-out, good response. And using humor in this kind of situation is not a bad idea. But you have to be careful what you say. Spotify, ahead of Mother's Day, how would you explain Spotify to your mom? There could be a free Spotify premium in it for her. They had no idea that this would explode. Ahead of Mother's Day, how would you explain ageism and sexism to a Spotify marketer? And Spotify had to apologize for this information. Pardon me. This is one that I really like. J.P. Morgan thought they'd have an Ask Jimmy Lee Day. And the questions that people asked were very, very, very negative. And J.P. Morgan came back with, oops, tomorrow's Q&A is canceled. Bad idea, back to the drawing board. So we want you to really think about what messaging you're putting out there so that you don't create a social media crisis where there wasn't one. We really want to leave you with the idea that you can predict a crisis. Maybe not every crisis, but we're going to look at pre-crisis indicators and find a crisis before it happens. Are people complaining about poor equipment on your website through social media? Are there other conversations ongoing that you really need to be aware of that you're not monitoring for? And then where do people go for information once they see it? If I read a story, am I going to go straight to your website, or am I going to go look up for you on Facebook or Twitter? And how do you know? And you won't know that unless you have an application that measures where that traffic goes. You know, one word of caution that I'd like to give you is in almost every incident that we've seen of workplace violence or campus violence, people have immediately gone to that company or university or school's website, and those websites have crashed. You may not do load testing on your website, but you need to have an idea of, okay, we don't do load testing. We know that if 1 million people suddenly hit our website, it would crash. In that case, we better use another channel, not our website. We better use Twitter, or we better use Facebook. And if you don't have an account, you need to own your name. Even if you're not going to use it, own your name so that no one else can. We want you to predict, plan, perform, and we want you to download a brief. The brief of this specific session will be available in about 48 hours. But meanwhile, there are more than 15 other briefs, and you can always look at a replay on our YouTube channel listed on our website, or just go to youtube.com/continuityexperts. That concludes my presentation for you today on how we go about developing a predictive, actionable intelligence network for you. If you have any questions, please contact us at webinars@firestorm.com. If we can help in any way, I'd be happy to spend an hour with you on the phone with Blair and discuss how we can help you devise an intelligence network for your organization. And as always, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Joe or Blair, do you have any closing remarks?
Yes. You can learn more about this subject through the assessment, the free assessment that we offer to manufacturers in the state. You can contact us through NJMEP.org or through Firestorm's website as well to arrange to have an assessment done at your facility. Blair?
Okay. That's fabulous, Joe. I'm sorry I didn't mention that, and what an awesome opportunity that is. I think that's really terrific. So we look forward to doing that. Well, thank you, everyone. This concludes our session for today. We look forward to speaking to you again on our next session on the virtual investigation, and have a great day. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Blair. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.